Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Welcome to the Lowdown with Sheli Brown. We have a special guest today.
Making a special appearance.
Live. Miss Cynthia's joined us. And we have a really good topic today, but of course, first, let's talk about safety. The number one thing that we want to continue to encourage is that distracted driving. Stay away from that as much as possible. I know for me personally, whenever I go to call a driver, I always go into our system and make sure that they're not driving. And sometimes we can't avoid that, but I try. If it's something that's not emergent, then I'll see if they just got off duty or, they're on a break. Just because even if without or with the Bluetooth, it's still a distraction. And I actually was thinking about it this morning, and y'all may have experienced this. I actually feel like I'm super hyper-focused on the phone versus with somebody next to me because I can read their body language subconsciously. They're, just the cues that you can gather from somebody sitting right next to you or with you is very different than on the phone because I'm having to pay attention to inflection, tone, all those things, the wording. And I feel like that is a distraction when you're in the car.
It definitely is. Oh, yeah. I mean, because you think it's not. You're just going about your business. But like they've said, then all of a sudden you realize you're home. You're like, oh, wait, I don't remember passing that or I didn't see that on the way here. How did I get here?
Yes.
Or somebody's talking and then you realize you were paying attention to driving, which is what you should be doing. And then you're like, wait, what did you say?
Yes.
So it is true. If you really do stop and think about it, you can only really focus on one or the other.
So we just want to continue to encourage you guys, if you can, avoid those distractions at all possible. And we'll get to today's topic. So actually, Cynthia had the suggestion for today's topic. I wasn't sure exactly what we were going to talk about this week, but it's a great topic, and it's about estate planning. So Dylan, tell me, I'm going to call you out here. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of estate planning? What's that description?
Well, first of all, let's ignore the fact that I just had to come out from wherever it is that
You crawled out of the floor?
Yeah.
His little hiding
under the table.
I love it.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind whenever I think of estate planning is not exactly planning to write my will or anything. It just makes it sound like I'm planning to buy a house or something. But the first thing that comes to my mind is my family, and just in the event that I pass or anything before they do, how do I want to leave them? And how do I want to leave all of the things that I have collected? Not that I have that much to my name or anything, but how can I leave them in a better position than they are before I die, I guess?
Yes.
For lack of better words there. I don't really know how else to put that. I'm still relatively young in my days, and so I haven't necessarily given it a whole lot of thought. I did have a few instances where I was at a few funerals for some family members, and it did cross my mind. I was a little bit younger then, and I was like, man, if I were to die, what do I do about this? How do I even begin writing a will? I never really had that conversation with my parents, so it's never been something I gave a lot of thought, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing is you actually have a better hand on it than I did at 22 or 23 years old. The first time that I ever experienced even the thought process of planning in regards to end of life or after the end of my life was when my husband deployed at 23. And it's like, oh gosh, we have all these things that we have to consider and think about. And it was really jarring because before that, I had never thought about, I'm living forever,
Yes.
I'm going to have this really great life. We had just got married. It was just this big, you look at this long road ahead of you and you don't think about the unexpected. So
yeah. No, very true. And you mentioned a good point that it's not really a conversation that you have with your parents because most parents, don't want to think about that, but they especially don't want to talk to their child
right
about, hey, let's plan for the end of your life. that's a really hard thing to do, you know, but in reality, you have to learn somewhere and you need somebody. And like you said, I mean, we had to think about it very early because I had Brent at 20 and Riley at 23. So we had kids. So I had to think about, God forbid, if something happens to us, like, who's taking the kids? You know, I mean, someone has to take care of them. And that is a really hard, and then those are hard conversations to have also, because the most important thing to me then I really had to think about was what was going to be the best situation for the kids. It was almost kind of like adoption. Like, you know, you have to not be selfish and think about, you know, because of course the first thought is, well, I'll leave them with my mom. But when you start thinking about the kids in that situation, like, I don't think it's really fair to either one. If that's your only option, of course. But we had best friends that were the same age. We're going to be going through the same phases of life. And we ultimately chose that if something were to happen to us, they would go to Scott and Ivy and not my parents. And of course, my mom wasn't very happy about that when I told her. But I told her, I was like, I want you to be able to be a grandma. Like, I know that she would still leave you very involved in their lives. And they need grandparents. Like, they need that outlet also. These people will be raising other children. So they'll have other kids that are around. They'll be doing the homework and, you know, taking them to sports and doing all of that stuff. And that it's a lot to ask of anybody, but at least them, they're already in doing those same things.
Right.
And then I knew, you know, they could continue. And if you're not comfortable having that conversation with the relatives that think you're going to leave your kids with them or whatever, maybe leave a letter. I mean, you know, that's what I used to tell them. I was like, well, and if you don't know, like, you can be mad at me after I die. Like, I won't be here to know that you're mad at me. But just explaining, like, it's not a personal thing. It's not because I don't know that you would love my children and do amazing with them. I'm just trying to think of the bigger picture and what's fair to everyone and the best situation for the kids.
Absolutely. When did you start thinking about estate planning in general?
Well, my career prior to BCB was a registered nurse, and I worked in the hospice realm. So I saw this a lot, and I started doing that, you know, fairly young, in my 20s. So I didn't think about a lot of this until I saw it firsthand, and then I was like, whoa, this is a big deal, and a lot of people aren't prepared.
Yeah.
So I learned just through job experience, but it's definitely something that you have to think about, something that you have to plan for. Even us that are middle-aged still have, you know, some of us parents are still alive.
Yes.
And in their 80s and 90s. And a lot of them didn't think about this stuff either. So even not only preparing for ourselves, but for our parents who, you know, may end up passing, you know, and however long.
When that happens, it's so hard to then have to jump into that role.
Exactly.
But someone has to do it. Like when my mother-in-law passed away, there were no preparations and then somebody had to do it. So I had to step in and help with that. And it is a lot because everyone's so lost.
It is. So there are just so many good resources out there and a lot of, I would just encourage everybody to take advantage or to look it up or, you know, I know we have some programs we'll talk about later, but, you know, leaving a living will, make decisions now while you can. That way you don't have to put that burden on your family members. It's written out what you want, you know, advanced directives. Do you want to be resuscitated? Those are all just great things that take the burden off your family. Absolutely. You've made that decision. They're comfortable because they know that's what you want. You know, again, conversations like that are hard, but those are easy forms to fill out. Most of them are free. You just have to get them notarized. And guess what? There they are. They're ready for you. So this is actually an important topic to me because I saw firsthand what people who didn't have this planned out, what those families went through, the arguing, the bickering, the trying to come up with funds at the last minute. Do we cremate or do we bury? And, you know, that's not a time where you want all that family drama. It should be a time where you're coming together to support each other and whatnot. So as much planning that you can do
in advance
is 100% the way to go. Although it is a morbid conversation, you don't want to think about it, but it is reality. So the more you can do, the better for everyone.
Yes.
Well, you know,
sorry.
You first.
Oh no, I was just saying, and also kind of taking that guilt off of somebody.
Oh, sure.
Because, that's something that whoever has to make that decision, to, turn the machines off or do anything like that, that person's going to live with that. So if you can even just help alleviate that and take that off of somebody.
And that's the thing, is you're taking the emotion out of it. And especially because specifically for, our family, we have this, and I've talked about it before, we have this unique situation. My in-laws actually live with us and they have their own little in-law suite. But what my mother-in-law went through with her father was actually one of the reasons that we decided to do this. They're in the right frame of mind. They're almost retiring. And they wanted to be able to make all these decisions about the end days, even though they still have, 20 years possibly left. They wanted to be able to enjoy that and know that everything's taken care of. I remember when we first all moved in together, she was like, okay, here's all of my stuff. This is the filing cabinet. Here's, and it's not just about the will. There's all these things that go into that. And making sure that you're on the same page and having that quote unquote executor.
Yeah, because like you said, there are so many other things. It's not just, there's so many things you don't think about.
Absolutely.
And then, people are fighting over who gets this picture, who gets this ring. Like, there's enough for everyone.
Well, and it's something as silly as, for our household, my husband's a huge Stars fan. I mean, I'm a Stars fan, but not like him. He's diehard. But he has all of these really amazing Stars things. And it was something he wanted to make sure that his brother got all of that stuff. He's like, I love you, but I want him to have all of that. But just simple things like that where,
you might have thought, he's leaving it to the boys.
Right. And, they may have already had that talk, and Clint thinks that he's getting all of the Star stuff and, just simple things like that. But when you are, unfortunately, in that moment and everyone is suffering and going through the stages of grief, something as simple as, well, I was supposed to get, they left that to me, becomes a super charged emotional thing. And so if you take all of that out of it, it's easier for everybody to, focus on the more important things.
Yes. And because even you might think it's going to be easy. Because for instance, we have a boy, we have a girl. Mine, Brent, and Riley's birthdays are all in January. So all of my birthstone and jewelry stuff is garnet. It's all of our colors. But I'm like, Brent's not going to want jewelry. Like, Riley, you can have all my jewelry. But you don't think about it. I'm like, but Brent might want something that was mine. And same thing, we would just automatically think, well, if David passes away, Brent's going to get all of his stuff. Well, I know Riley will want something. So even that, where you think, that's easily dividable, there's still other things to consider.
Absolutely.
To kind of go off of that, my grandpa used to be a painter, and he doesn't really do it anymore. He has kind of bad tremors in his hands, so he hasn't really had the opportunity. He is not as closed off about dying, I guess, as a lot of people are, because he'll be like, this painting on the wall is going to you, this painting on the wall is going to you, and everybody has their own designated painting, and if anybody ever acts up, he's like, you're not getting your painting anymore. And
I love it.
Things like that. But I think just having that conversation and just being open and not having it be a taboo subject really helps a lot. Taking, like you said, taking the emotion out of it and just kind of looking at it from a forward-thinking stance. And
we plan everything in our life.
We plan everything, and this is part of our life. It's part of the life. We are all going. We're all going to face it.
We have no choice in the matter. It is going to happen.
It's the one common denominator for everybody. So why not plan a little bit what's going to happen afterwards? And I know that in that same example, he is hard on his stance on who is getting which painting. I think it's also because many years of my mom and her two brothers saying, we want this one, we want that one. And so he has just kind of divvied them up. And I think he's started to give them away as Christmas presents slowly. So he doesn't even have to deal with it later.
It's already done.
Oh my gosh, I'm in love with him.
So it might be a little bit easier to do it that way. If you have something that you want to pass along, maybe it is very important to fill out that paperwork and very important to get it in the will and get it specifically in text and notarized and everything so that there is no argument. But maybe also before anything goes along, be like, hey, I'm not necessarily using this anymore and I wanted you to have it after I passed away. Here it is.
I just figured out how to save some money this Christmas.
Yeah. You guys get my gemstones.
Thank you.
Yes, for sure. And then with that too, just with any like life changes, you've got to remember, for those of you who have done this and are prepared, awesome. Kudos to you. I mean, I'm guilty. I still need to firm up some stuff myself. Life just gets in the way, but it's so important. But then you have to reevaluate, did I have another kid? Am I divorced? Things like that. And remember to change beneficiaries, because that can be a big thing too.
Big one.
So, every year when you do your taxes, you might just want to reassess what your whole plans are and make sure you're still good with that, because things change, from year to year, family situations, things like that. So, very important, especially if you're going to name like a power of attorney to make decisions on your behalf. Those are just things you have to stay on top of to make sure, yes, I still want that person to decide something for me, because, you might not like them anymore, and they might, I don't know.
And a big part of that also is, a lot of times you automatically assume that your executor or whoever is going to be your spouse or your significant other. But a lot of times people choose somebody else so that, again, they take that kind of guilt or emotion off of their spouse, and don't, even though it's already in writing, it's just more of a, I don't want you to have to deal with that. I already know you're going to be emotional about everything else. And I want somebody that can take the emotion out of it. Like, even if it is a best friend, of course, they're still going to be emotional, but they can look at it differently than your spouse is going to look at it, or than your child is going to look at it.
Well, and you can even secure an attorney's office who can handle all of that, because it's not just about your property. You're talking about bank accounts, finances, 401k, if you haven't already, utilized that, the life insurance, all of it. I know for me, I have a policy here, and then I have a policy at through my husband's employer. And so, does he know that? I can tell you that we probably need to reevaluate and sit down and talk about all of that.
Yes.
But he also knows there's a filing cabinet, and everything about our life is in that filing cabinet. So if something were to happen to me, because that's the other part is it's not just about the long term, it's also about the short term. We're not promised.
Yep.
It could be tomorrow, it could be 30 years from now. We don't know that. And so I just it makes me feel really good to know that I'm organized and I've got everything situated. And that's going to be one less thing that Chad or, the rest of my family, not just my husband, has to deal with.
But has he brought his stuff home too? Or like, you have all of his paperwork and things too? Because David sets up all of his stuff at work. And I did one day, I stopped and I was like, okay, well, so if something happens to you, like,
where's all this stuff?
He's like, contact HR. Okay. Thanks a lot for that one.
I appreciate that.
I'm like, well, no, but I need to know. Like, I have no idea. I'm like, I need you to bring that information home, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna need that.
So even though you might be thinking you're ready on your stuff, maybe get the other information as well.
Agreed. The other part is property. A lot of people forget cars. Everything that might have your name on it, debts, all of that stuff goes into play during that process. And so it's, again, you're dealing with other things than a loss. The last thing that you want your family to deal with aside from that is other stuff that, may come up. So being open and honest and having it stored somewhere, again, there's a folder. That's all it takes, and just for that basic stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to be super involved. But a lot of people forget, there's making sure that you have Social Security numbers, the Social Security card, birth certificate, things like that you don't normally manage specifically within your family, whether it be your parents or your sister, brother, whoever, making sure that you know what's going on with them and that they're prepared. Because again, they may not be prepared. And so it takes you kind of bringing that subject up with them to say, hey, have you thought about this stuff? Here's what I have planned. What's your thoughts about it? Even something as simple as saying, you know what, I don't want a memorial service. some people, they don't want that. And how do you know if you don't ask them?
And then you have the hard part of, oh, sorry, Dylan, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was looking at Shelley. I was we already forgot about you. Look, just one day we'll bring someone else. Replaced you already.
Replaced Dylan.
I was just going to say, also, like burial methods and ways to deal with your body after you have passed. Some people want to be cremated. Some people want to be buried. Some people want to be, I don't know. There's so many different things now. You can like put your ashes in a tree. You can have.
I know.
Yeah, you can.
I saw something last night. We were on the same wavelength. I saw something last night that said, if you're going to be cremated, then just have your remains put into a little like an hourglass thing, but
cool.
the small one, and then you can still be a part of family game nights.
Oh. Until somebody gets mad and throws it.
And breaks it. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I've actually researched the tree thing. I love that idea, because to me personally, and this is not everybody, but spiritually, I would feel like I'm still contributing, that Google it. It's great.
It is. It's cool. It's cool. And just to be able to have the next generation of your family watch it grow up and be like, hey, there's grandma or there's whatever. It's awesome. Yeah. It's a cool thing. And, there is a spiritual connection in there a little bit. But there's lots of methods. I mean, you can even, I was reading, this is so lame, but I was reading the other day, you can put them in like a record and have like songs on it. And it's like your ashes in this record and you can listen to it. You can shoot them into space. You can put them in actual ammunition shells.
I've seen people get tattoos. Like, I guess they use the ashes in a tattoo.
I've heard that.
On you.
Oh, yeah. That's a little bit different. I
personally told Riley, you can just turn me into a diamond.
Yeah, okay.
There you go.
That's also an option. Yeah, lots of things. And those are things to think about, Not everybody wants to be buried. It takes up a lot of room in the area, so maybe
money.
It's very expensive. It's very
expensive. The thing is, you don't think about how expensive it is to die. I mean,
fact.
For lack of a better way of saying
it's a fact.
It is. I mean, it takes money. It's like you can't even do that for free.
Right. Yeah. Well, and usually it's unfortunately you realize that when you're not prepared, and if you are prepared, you think less so much about that. Even considering, hey, I know at some point I'm going to retire in this particular area. Even going as far as securing a funeral home, if that's what you want to do.
You can do it now and make payment plans. They allow you to do it.
My parents already have their plots. Mm-hmm. I mean, we already have that. That's done and taken care of, and we don't have to worry about that. And that's one less thing that we have to worry about it, because I didn't realize that it costs $4,000 for a piece of dirt.
The land. Well, and that's the other thing too about plots. Is picking where you want it, because you may have grown up in Louisiana, but you may have raised your children in Texas. And at the end of the day, are you wanting to, because your parents may be buried in Louisiana, do you want to be there in Louisiana with them, or do you want to be in Texas where family can visit? You don't think about those things either.
And that was something that actually Chad and I had talked about is, normally if a soldier dies, they have the option to go to the Arlington Cemetery. Absolutely not. Like, I want you in Red Oak, but, of course he didn't care either way, but, you don't think about those things. Like, where do they want to be? It would be an honor, obviously, for him to be there. But, during the course of him getting out of the military and all of that, he qualifies for a spot here locally in the VA cemetery here, but I didn't realize it also includes spouse. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of spouse, like we were saying, update everything. Again, somebody may have had a spouse that passed away and then remarried. So then what do you want to do? Like, do they still want to be with that spouse? Then you join them, or are you getting your own? I mean, that
seems like grounds for divorce. We might need to avoid that subject.
But they didn't stop loving the previous spouse. They passed away. Like, that would be a really, I don't know.
Well,
never have to go
and
through that
correct me if I'm wrong, and somebody may, I know way too much about Tudor history, but I think King Henry VIII is actually buried with like the fourth wife, but he had like 6 of them.
So the fourth was the most special?
7. Yeah. or maybe it was a third one. I don't know. But regardless, I mean,
definitely caused a fight.
It's different, whichever.
Yes.
But the best way that I found is printing out an executor checklist. And if you go through that personally for yourself and all of your property, it's going to make it that much easier for, somebody to carry that out.
Mm-hmm.
And you can download them. There's a million versions.
Everything on the internet.
And it just goes through the checklist of make sure you have a will. What about your assets? Making an inventory. What's all the property that you own? Automobiles that you have, bank accounts, savings accounts. If you have foreign accounts, how to access those. You have to have a power of attorney, making sure that somebody will have access to all of that so that it just doesn't go to the state and then they get to decide where all of it goes, and that's really a really good way of planning. We plan everything, I may buy a house and we plan to buy a house, and you may have children, but I don't have children. All those things, we have different life events that happen and we plan for all those things. But that's the one thing we all have in common is we're all going to have to address that at some point. And it's better now than later.
Yep. And you had a good one with the bank accounts because you don't think about that. But I know how to get into our account. David, no idea. He just says, as long as I swipe my card and it works, I'm good. But what if something happened to both of us?
Yep.
Brett and Riley don't know our bank account number. I mean, what's going on with that stuff?
Yep.
So, yeah.
It's important. All of those things are very important to think about. And I don't think it's usually a priority until you experience the other side like you have, or where you've seen the dark side of that if you don't have that preparation.
Well, we always think we have time. Oh, I'll do that when I get older. I'll do that. But
I do it every day.
Unfortunately, sometimes you don't get that opportunity.
Yes. Well, I want to make sure that we talk about the EAP.
Yes.
I know we're kind of running a little bit over, lost track of time, told you it goes fast. We have this EAP, and you've heard us talk about it over and over and over. What is the Employee Assistance Program? So they provide a variety of sources. It's not just the behavioral health to help. Obviously, it would be great. Grief, loss. They do anxiety, depression, stress, relationship conflicts, work-life solutions, legal guidance, and that's number one, preparing wills. You actually get one of the benefits is they do free online will preparation. So it's just a basic will, and where you can include everything that you need to make sure that gets taken care of. And they actually have an app. I didn't know this till yesterday. One America, who is the one that is the carrier we go through for life insurance. You can just call them, or they have an app, and it's, or you can go online. So the app is actually called Guidance Resources Now. That's the actual app. And then you can go in and utilize all of those services through the app, or you can just give them a call. So if you have a pen and paper and you're not driving, 855-365-4754. And again, it's through One America. Obviously, if you have a question, you just call any of us and we'll be happy to help in any way we can. Take care. Please think about these things, have those hard talks, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.